Hey guys, I'm Esther from ESSYCOOKS, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to make these delicious, crispy, smashed Brussels sprouts, and we're going to be making this amazing, creamy maple tahini dipping sauce with it. This is the star of the show. It's absolutely amazing. Now, I'll tell you guys, making smashed anything, smashed potatoes, smashed Brussels, smashed carrots, it takes a little bit of extra effort. There are a couple more steps involved, but trust me when I tell you, it is so worth it because they are amazing and delicious, and this is the perfect side dish that you can make if you're going to an event or if you just want to have this on the side of your dinner. So let's get started. I'm going to show you how I make these. Okay, so we're going to start with 2 pounds of Brussels sprouts. So I actually found a bag. If you find a bag in the store, usually it is 2 pounds. You can just check on the back side, and that's about 907 grams of Brussels sprouts. So you can see about how many there is there. And now I'm just going to wash those off quickly in the sink, and the outer leaves are going to probably fall off anyways. So just give them a good rinse and they are good to go. And then I want to remove the hard ends off these Brussels sprouts. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut those off, and you can see a couple of the outer leaves will fall off, and I'm just going to put those aside. I can roast those up after. You can get rid of them, but I like to use them afterwards. So you can see here I want to keep my Brussels in one piece, so don't cut too far up or it can fall apart, but I'm just going to remove the hard end off of each of these. So I'm going to continue doing that on all of these Brussels sprouts. So it just does take a few minutes to cut these, but just keep going at it and just set those leaves aside. And what I do with those leaves is I just roast them in the oven, kind of like kale chips, and then I eat them. And I like them. My husband likes them. They're pretty good. So if you like Brussels sprouts, you will probably like them like that as well. So you can see there how I have them. They're all whole Brussels sprouts. And yes, they do come in different sizes. Now I'm going to boil a large pot of water, and the first thing I'm going to do is boil these. So we're just going to start adding all the Brussels sprouts into the boiling water and boil them for about 10 to 15 minutes until they are fairly cooked. And while those are boiling, I'm going to prepare an ice bath. So I'm just going to get a big bowl of water and add some cold water and ice to it. So once I'm done boiling these Brussels sprouts, I am going to start adding them to the ice bath to completely cool them off before I smash them and roast them in the oven. So I'm going to just kind of start straining off the hot water and adding those in to the ice bath. And while I'm doing that too, I do want to preheat the oven to 450 degrees. We're going to allow these Brussels sprouts to cool for about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, depending on how long it takes to cool them. So I'm just going to add them in there, and the oven is preheating while those are cooling. And then I'm going to want to get the water off of these and put them on a baking sheet with parchment paper. Don't know why that took me so long to get out. So I lined my baking sheet with parchment paper. I'm going to spread the Brussels sprouts out pretty evenly over the baking sheet. Now, I actually needed 2 baking sheets because I don't want these too close together because I want them to really crisp up. So I'm going to go ahead and just evenly distribute these all over the baking sheet. And again, like I said, you probably need a second baking sheet for this because there are so many in 2 pounds of Brussels sprouts, and we want to make sure we get them super nice and crispy. So there's my second baking sheet. I've got it lined with parchment paper. If you don't line it with parchment paper, it can end up being quite a bit of a mess. Like there's a bit of burnage and everything like that on there. Now I'm going to use, for the smashing, which is the fun part, I'm going to use the back of a flat jar or a flat glass. It just needs to be flat so that you can press down and just smash them. So just like this, you can see how we're kind of completely flattening them. I mean, not too thin because you don't want them to fall apart, but we are pressing down and just kind of flattening those Brussels sprouts. So you can do this with potatoes, you can do this with carrots. I'm just going to keep pressing down here on all of them and flattening them nicely like this. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with all of them. And as I'm doing this, you know, a bit of moisture is released because I did boil them. So you can use a towel, tea towel, or a paper towel. I like to just absorb a bit of this extra moisture before putting them in. This is optional, but I was noticing some water beads around the side after I smash them, and so I'd like to get rid of those because I want them to really crisp up. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this with all of the Brussels sprouts so that they're nice and dry before I start adding, you know, my olive oil and my salt and pepper. And then to make these Brussels sprouts super crispy and delicious, we are going to be roasting them in the oven with some extra virgin olive oil. So I have a little brush here that I'm going to brush the olive oil on with. So I'm just going to brush each one lightly with oil, and you want to kind of get it all over the surface so that they get nice and crispy and roasted in the oven. Now, It depends on how much olive oil you want to put on them, but they just need to be lightly coated. I'm pulling something off there. It's probably my dog's hair. It gets everywhere. Okay, now I'm just going to keep coating those. You can see a little close-up shot of that there, just so that they're nicely lightly coated with that extra virgin olive oil. Then just a little sprinkle of salt on top of each Brussels, and then some freshly ground black pepper on top of each of them as well. And that oven is preheated. It is nice and hot, so I'm going to add these Brussels sprouts into the oven. I'm going to bake them for 35 minutes. You can see this, the whole procedure does take a while, so it's worth it, but make sure you have enough time to do this. And then halfway through, we're going to want to flip those Brussels sprouts, and we're going to start making our maple tahini dipping sauce. This is what makes it amazing. So we're going to start with a 1/4 cup of freshly squeezed lemon juice. We're just going to add this all into a mason jar. So if you don't have freshly squeezed, you can just use the bottled stuff, but freshly squeezed is always best. And we're just going to get the other little bit of lemon juice in there as well. And then I have a 1/3 cup of extra virgin olive oil. A 1/4 cup would work as well if you want a little bit less oil in there. So again, I'm using extra virgin olive oil in there, and you can actually blend this whole thing up, but I'm just mixing it in a mason jar just because it is faster and easier. So I've got 2 tablespoons now of red wine vinegar. If you don't have that, you can use apple cider vinegar. And then I've got 1 clove of freshly minced garlic, so that's going to give it a really nice flavor as well. We're going to add that in. So if you don't want to hit like a little piece of garlic chunk, that's why you would blend it, but I honestly don't mind. Then I'm going to put 3 tablespoons of pure maple syrup. This is so good. I just love maple syrup, and it works perfectly in this dipping sauce. Then I've got a teaspoon of salt, and I'm going to add just some freshly ground black pepper. Again, about a teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper. And then to make it super nice and creamy, we've got a 1/4 cup of tahini, and I'm just going to add the lid onto my mason jar and give that a really good shake to combine all of the ingredients together. Now this dipping sauce, I mean, we want it to be a dipping sauce, so we want it to be fairly thick, but if you want to thin it out a little bit, if you want to drizzle it on top rather than use it as a dipping sauce, you can thin it out using a little bit of water. Depending on your tahini, sometimes it comes out super thick, sometimes it comes out a bit thinner. So don't add any water until you mix it up, and just check on the consistency to make sure it is how you like it. So for me, this is what I'm looking for, is this thick, creamy consistency, because we're going to be dipping in it, and I want it to stick to, you know, each Brussels sprout as I'm dipping it in. But again, you could blend it, food process it up too if you wanted to. You can see a couple little garlic pieces in there, and that would prevent that from happening. Now, these are roasted. If they're not as crispy as you want, you can broil them for a couple minutes on high to really crisp up the top, but I didn't need to do that. They roasted up perfectly, and I think dabbing them with the paper towel really helps with that. So you can see how nice and crispy and delicious those are looking. Now you want to serve these fresh right away. So if you are bringing them somewhere, you may want to broil them in the oven just to kind of heat them and re-crisp them up, because you do want to serve them right away. They won't I've stored these as leftovers and eaten them, and they're still so delicious, but they're not as crispy as when you pull them straight out of the oven. So just keep that in mind. And now I'm just going to prepare these to serve. So I've got my maple tahini dipping sauce there, and I've got my smashed crispy Brussels sprouts, and I'm just going to start layering these in kind of like a flower shape around, just because it looks so nice. And wow, look at how crispy and delicious those look. And you can see that's just the perfect consistency that we want for that dipping sauce. Stay tuned here for the taste test. It is time for the taste test. That is so good. Guys, this dipping sauce, I can't wait to try like a million other things with this dipping sauce because it is so good. But also, these Brussels sprouts taste amazing. Brussels sprouts, I know some people like them on their own, and yes, they're a great vegetable, but they have a pretty strong flavor. So I think Brussels sprouts need a little sauce, need a little something to make them taste super good, and this is it. Okay, one more for good measure. Ooh, yes.
Ready?
Oh yeah. Love the dipping sauce?
That's good. I could just eat these as a main dish.
Oh wow. I'm so glad you like it. All right, thank you guys so much for watching this video on how I make my smashed crispy Brussels sprouts with this amazing side dipping tahini sauce. If you guys like this video and you want to see more videos like this one, just make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below.